Have you ever said something that you didn't mean exactly the way you said it? Something like, "My feet are killing me," or "You're pulling my leg." Most of the times when you say these things, you don't actually mean them the way you say them. You just say them for effect. You make statements to make your words sound more colorful and pleasant to listen to. Well, when we speak this way, it's called speaking figuratively, or using what is known as figurative language. Figurative language is the opposite of literal language. In other words, you don't literally mean that your feet are trying to end your life with poison or something. You mean that they hurt. And you don't literally mean that someone has grabbed onto your leg and is pulling it. You mean that they are just kidding with you. There are many different types of figurative language, and in order to be able to identify them all and use them properly, we need to know what they are. And that's what this video is all about. Today we're going to be taking Cornell Notes on figurative language. By the time you're done, you'll be a master in the art of speaking figuratively. So now that we know what we're here for, let's get this show on the road. Hey, wait a minute. That was figurative language right there. I'm on top of the world. Wait, I did it again. I got 1,000,000 of them. No, I don't. Not literally. See how easy it is? Okay, that's enough of that. Let's move on. The first thing we'll need is a set of Cornell notes like these. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to use light blue notes, the same color as the background. To get started, we'll want to write the topic at the top of the page for easy reference later. The topic of these notes is, of course, figurative language. You want to write that right at the top middle of the page. It might also be a good idea to write your name, date, class, and period at the top as well, if you haven't already done so. Next, it's on to the objective. Remember, you don't necessarily have to write down the objective on your Cornell Notes. Today's objective is that we want to be able to recognize, understand, and use figures of speech. Our essential guiding questions do need to be written at the top of your notes. There are 2 questions, so make sure you leave room at the top for both questions. The first question is, what are the different types of figurative language? And the second, how can you recognize the different figures of speech? By the time we're done, we should be able to answer both of these questions. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's take some notes. Let's start by defining figurative language. Figurative language is when writers use words or phrases to help readers picture ordinary things in new ways. While literal language can be understood to mean exactly what it says, figurative language does not mean exactly what it says and requires some interpretation to figure it out. In other words, we have to think about it in order to understand it. Figurative language, which is sometimes called figures of speech, can be found in all types of literature, including short stories, novels, and poems. Most often, figurative language is associated with poems because so many good poems use some kind of figures of speech. But remember, figurative language can be found in every type of text, including our everyday speech. There are 5 main types of figurative language that you'll want to be familiar with. You'll want to add all of these to your notes. They are similes, metaphors, hyperbole, personification, and idioms. You may already be familiar with most or all of these figures of speech, and if so, consider this a review. If not, we're going to take a closer look at each of these types of figurative language to make sure everyone understands them. Our first type of figurative language is called a simile. The definition of a simile is a phrase that compares 2 unlike things using as, like, or than. The important thing is that the comparison is between 2 things that usually would not be thought of as being alike. The whole purpose of the simile is to force us to think of the 2 items in a different way. Some examples of a simile might be This class is like a bad dream. I feel like that all the time as a teacher. And without my glasses, I'm as blind as a bat. Of course, that doesn't literally mean that the person can't see. It just means that they can't see as well without their glasses as they can with them. That's our first type of figurative language, which is simile. Our next type of figurative language is called metaphor. A metaphor is a phrase that compares two unlike things by saying one thing is another. Metaphors and similes are closely related, the only difference between the two being that a simile uses a comparison word like or as, whereas a metaphor says that one thing is exactly the same as another. Some examples of a metaphor would be, this class is a bad dream. This comparison is just like the one we did with the simile. The only difference is we took out the like and said that the class is a dream. Our other example might be time is money. That doesn't literally mean that time is a dollar bill or a coin. It just means that time is valuable in the same way that money is valuable. Our third type of figurative language is called hyperbole. Hyperbole is an exaggerated statement. It generally makes something seem better or worse than it really is. Some examples of a hyperbole might be, if I don't go to the bathroom, I'm going to explode. I hear this all the time as a teacher. Everyone has to go to the bathroom right now. If not, they say they're going to explode. I've never had a student explode on me yet, but somehow people always say it. Our other example of a hyperbole, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Now, when we say that, that does not literally mean that I can eat an entire horse. If I could, that'd be a little strange, and I don't think horses taste very good. But usually when people say it, they're trying to make a point. They're trying to say how hungry they are by exaggerating with a statement like, I could eat a horse. Our fourth type of figurative language is called personification. Personification means giving human traits to non-living things. We see personification all the time, but the best place to find personification is in Disney movies, like The Lion King. In The Lion King, you got characters like Simba and Timon and Pumbaa, and they can do things that human beings can do, like sing and dance and talk and have emotions and feelings. Excellent examples of personification. Some other examples that we might see in literature would be something like the stars danced playfully in the sky. Stars don't have legs, they can't dance, that's something that human beings do. Another example of personification might be the rundown house seemed depressed. When we look at a house, it doesn't have a face or emotions. We can kind of see something that probably isn't there, and we usually use personification to give it something that we can see that it doesn't already have. So those are two examples of personification. Our fifth and final type of figurative language is the idiom. An idiom is defined as a common expression that is not meant to be taken exactly as it is said. With an idiom, we can't figure out the exact meaning of what's being said simply by reading the words. We often have to look elsewhere to determine its meaning. Now, this can be tricky because often idioms are specific to certain regions or languages. This means that there are idioms that are specific to the English language but have no meaning outside of countries that speak English. This can make it difficult for speakers of other languages to figure out the meanings of English idioms. Sometimes we can only understand them after being exposed to them. Some examples of idioms might be, it was raining cats and dogs yesterday. That doesn't mean that cats and dogs were literally falling out of the sky. It just means that it was raining so hard that it felt like more than just rain was falling. Another example of an idiom might be, she let the cat out of the bag when she mentioned the surprise party. Again, it doesn't mean that she was literally holding a bag with a cat in it. I'm pretty sure that would be animal abuse. It means that she said out loud something that was supposed to be kept a secret. Notice that with this idiom, we can figure out what the meaning is by looking at the context around the phrase. The words, when she mentioned the surprise party, let us know that this idiom has something to do with saying something that wasn't supposed to be said. You know, idioms can be a lot of fun. So when you're done with this video, I invite you to look back on my Blackboard page and take a look at a video that shows you exactly how silly idioms can be. It's a cartoon from the 1950s and it's called Symphony and Slang. In this short video, the main character is using idiom after idiom in a conversation, but because the person he's speaking to isn't familiar with these idioms, he imagines them literally rather than figuratively. The interesting thing about this video is that it's so old that many of the idioms used in the cartoon aren't even used anymore, while others of them are still around these days. How many of these idioms do you think you can recognize from looking at this video? On to the big finish, the summary. No set of Cornell Notes is complete without a summary. The summary allows you to look back at what you've written and make sure you understand it by restating something from the notes you just took. For this summary, I want you to look back at each type of figurative language we just discussed and come up with your own example of that type of figurative language. So one simile, one metaphor, and so forth. It's okay to use a figure of speech that you've already heard of, but try to come up with one of your own, a figure of speech that no one else has ever heard of. Remember, you have the front and the back of your Cornell Notes to use. Once you've done that, you're completely done with your Cornell Notes. And with that, you're on your way to becoming a master of using figurative language. Don't forget to clip these notes into the class notes section of your binder and be prepared to use them in the near future. I promise that you will need them. This is Mr. Washington, reminding you that reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. So long, 7th graders.